Hi, it's Wednesday, July 24th, and this is today's video on Typhoon Gaemi. As is always the case in these videos, the thoughts expressed here are just mine. If you're going to make any decisions ahead of the storm, look to the local office, local emergency management, and the Japan Meteorological Agency for the best information local to you, as I give a big picture of things here, and I can't get down to the local level that they can. So we've seen a remarkable intensification phase over the past day with Typhoon Gaemi. The system, when I made my video yesterday morning, had sustained winds estimated to be about 70 knots. That's about 80 miles per hour. And now, 24 hours later, we're sitting here with a 120 knot or 140 mile per hour storm, maybe getting higher than that now. We're getting very close to that super typhoon threshold as the system comes very close to Japan and Taiwan this morning. You can see the eye very clearly defined on Taiwan radar. Now, we have seen some interesting movements in the past 6 hours. You saw towards the beginning of this loop, we had what appeared to be a due west-northwest track. But in recent hours, we've seen this completely turn towards the north, and now maybe in most recent frames, we're seeing a bend back towards the west. These kind of wobbles are extremely difficult to predict, and this is probably going to be happening for a long time now, and this is going to keep us from telling you exactly where the system's core is going to come ashore. Now, in some ways, it does not matter overall because we're still getting a wide expanse of typhoon force winds, and we'll probably see some winds at least gusting the typhoon force in the islands of Ishigaki, Takatomi, and Yonaguni in Japan. Yonaguni could potentially get more if this northerly track does get the eye just a little bit too close to the island. And of course, in Taiwan, we're going to be dealing with a lot of rainfall, especially with the high topography here, and we could be dealing with, in fact, we're likely to deal with this eye wall eventually along somewhere here from, say, central Taiwan to the northern Taiwan coastline, and this will be packing a punch when it does come through. Where it does matter, though, is where we have this fairly compact core of very strong winds. The maximum 120 knot winds are not stretching all too far from the center. They're only about here in these red areas that you see on radar. And that's going to be very important to watch for with these wobbles. Now, you'll see we just had this wobble towards the north. And one thing about Taiwan with typhoons is that it can often cause some weird tracks. We've seen it in history where storms like Gaemi was approaching the coast from the east, and because of the high topography, it has an effect on the vortex, and it causes the system to come towards the coast, do a looping track, and then, that could take several hours, and then it comes ashore finally into Taiwan. Or even sometimes that track can come towards the coast, do a loop, and then avoid Taiwan in some cases. We don't know exactly which one's going to happen. If I had to guess, I'd say we are probably going to see a landfall here at some point in Taiwan, but this could be a fairly drawn out event, and we could be looking at this storm being around here at least for the next day, and we could still be seeing impacts a couple days from now. This is going to be, like I said, a long and drawn out event. Now, going to infrared imagery, this is just very impressive to see. You can see that we have a lot of deep convection with these whites and pinks fully surrounding the eye. Now, it is a little bit thin on the north side, maybe a little bit of wind shear from the north. As we talked about yesterday, there would be some speed shear, as it's called, that would be imparting a little bit of a northerly shear on the storm, but it's clearly not having a detrimental impact on the storm. The northern eye wall remains very, very strong, as we saw on radar. But what we're watching for now is this warm spot in the middle. That's the eye. Does this fully clear out at some point today? If we do see that happen, then we could really see the system, ramp up to, say, super typhoon intensity and beyond. Now, I don't think we're going to see much more rapid strengthening. I think we are getting towards the ceiling for what the system has to offer. One thing about this part of the ocean is the ocean heat content does begin to drop off here. And especially what we talked about with the system sort of doing a loop around Taiwan, that could allow an easier upwelling process to take place east of the island, and that could allow the system to weaken from that. Now, one thing to keep in mind, though, that is good news that it will weaken. That could be after the eye wall just barely comes on shore into Taiwan, but also as the storm weakens, it does broaden out. So you could be increasing the wind impacts along this entire region. Now, if we look at the upper level flow, which is what water vapor helps us see, we can see here's our upper low backing back towards the southwest now over Hong Kong. This is helping a little bit with some outflow off towards the northwest. We are getting a little bit of outflow restriction because we have the eastern end of an upper high over China, restricting the outflow a little bit, but overall this is a fairly healthy outflow pattern. And really the only shear that does exist here is that light to moderate speed shear that I showed you in modeled soundings yesterday, but this is clearly not having a detrimental effect on the storm. I think if we are going to see any significant weakening happen, it's going to be from either of three things. Storm interacts with Taiwan significantly, the storm upwells water, or maybe we get an eye wall replacement cycle to take place. We've had some signs today of an eye wall replacement cycle trying to take place, but it seems to have not fully taken place. The onset never really happened. So right now we're still just with that one dominant eye wall in the center. Now, in terms of the rainfall that we could be seeing with the system, in Taiwan that these storms are notorious for bringing a lot of rainfall, and we could be looking at over 750 millimeters of rainfall. That could be a conservative estimate. This forecast is from the GFS ensemble, and you can see those bright yellow colors. That's at least 500 millimeters of rainfall on the ensemble mean across Taiwan over the next 5 days. And really, this is going to be coming in the next 2 to 3 days as the system passes through. But we could be looking at, and I've seen some model cases try and show up to a meter of rainfall, maybe even exceeding that across Taiwan. So this is going to be a very significant issue, especially inland and on the western coast of Taiwan. So, we're not getting the eye on the west side, but we could still be getting flooding issues from this. And with that high topography, that can easily lead to a lot of mudslides and flooding issues that can be very damaging, even if you're not getting hit directly by the typhoon. Now, in the southern Japanese islands, the rainfall will probably be a bit less than there. I don't think it's as mountainous there, but we could still be looking at, especially closer to the storm's core, 400 to 500 millimeters of rainfall in some of these islands, and that could as well cause some flooding issues. But also keep in mind, we're also dealing with storm surge impacts. This system has a very strong push of water on its northern side, and this is just going to be forcing a bunch of ocean water onto these islands, and especially in these Japanese islands, it's very susceptible to storm surge impacts. So if you're along the coastline, make sure you're getting away from there if that water begins to rise. You never want to underestimate the power of water, especially in storm surge from a typhoon like this. Now, touching a little bit on the center track, now it's, like I said, a bit difficult to pick out exactly what's going to happen because we keep getting these wobbles. But this is a hurricane model depiction of what could happen as the system comes through. One important thing I want to point out, look how big the wind field is on this model run. This is a very large wind field. This is what I was talking about with a storm surge. We've got a large fetch of 50 knot winds on the surface, even well removed from the center of circulation, and that could easily push a lot of water on shore, and especially in Taiwan as well. As the system comes here, comes towards the coast, you'll see it kind of do this looping manner, looping track. We sort of do it like this. This will keep an onshore push along this part of the coastline for, a day, and you could be getting a lot of water rise that just never goes down. Another issue is that with all that rainfall that we're getting, where's that rainfall going to go? Well, it's going to go towards the ocean, but that's where the water's rising. So you kind of get this convergence zone along that coast. And also point out how we also have some onshore flow on the west side of Taiwan. Now, this is not nearly as strong, but this could lead to still some water rises along the west coast, which could also cause some flooding issues with, as I mentioned, the rainfall over the central part of the island. Now, eventually the system does come ashore on the model. I think we are likely to still see a landfall in Taiwan. It's, again, uncertain exactly where it's going to come in. You can see this, after its looping track, sort of takes this northerly track and comes into northern Taiwan. But after that, the high terrain will likely disrupt the system very significantly. And for China, we're probably not going to see this system nearly as strong as it is right now once it does come your way. But I think the HAFS model is underdoing it quite a bit. This is a very odd wind pressure relationship, 956 millibars and 56 knot winds. This would still likely be a typhoon on this forecast, and this could be a very large typhoon as well, as once it moves over Taiwan, it's also going to broaden out as it weakens. So we're going to be getting a lot of onshore push here, and we could still be looking at strong winds, especially near this inner core. Now, the system will be moving in, looks like on this forecast it moves in early on Friday. Now, this is interesting. Maybe the HAFS is showing still some interaction from Taiwan's high topography. You'll see it kind of comes towards the coast and then does a looping track and then it comes north. That may be a possibility as well, as this is a very large area of low pressure, so that could still have an impact on it. But you can still see this widespread range of impact stretching across much of China and even coming into Shanghai. So even though we've removed the center track from where it was a few days ago, coming right into Shanghai, the system still could come your way. And we could be looking at, very strong winds, 50 knot plus, and heavy rainfall there as well, which could lead to flooding issues. That's all that I've got for today. I'll have another video out tomorrow. Stay safe in Taiwan and Japan as the system comes through, and hopefully the system it does not bring nearly as many bad impacts as we're seeing it could on the current data that we have. That's all I've got for today. Thanks for watching.